Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
All right, Peter. Here's another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. You know, I listen to these recordings. I'm going back and checking some of these recordings. Emma's like freaked out because when I do that, all the sound bars go red. She's like, Dad, you can't yell like that. Well, why not? I can do whatever I want.
Bill, in the guitar world, that's what we go for. That's the gold.
Oh, really? See?
Oh, yeah.
I got to be a guitar player. Huh?
Bang.
Hey, let's just not forget, anybody that knows me knows that I created Bill's Planet, and I am definitely captain of Bill's Planet. So I do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want, and if you don't like it, I'll convince you to like it.
Okay. You know what I say to people that come to my house? They start talking and say, hey, this is my house.
There you go.
This is my house. Get out. I can drop things on the floor. You can't tell me to pick things up. I can paint the room any damn color I want. I can have seashells for lights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so we're on episode 223. Sounds like a good lotto number if you played lotto. And you ready for this one?
What are we doing
I'm
today?
telling you, I'm stretching hard these days to make podcasts. I keep thinking, what the hell am I going to do next week? Because I don't go way far in advance and lay them out. I just kind of do it as the weeks come. Mm-hmm. So every week, recently, the last 4 or 5 weeks, anyways, I've actually amazed myself. Okay, because I like sit down and I'm like, I think about it all week and I'm like, what am I going to do? And then I sit down to write and I come up. It's taking me longer to write them because I have to figure it out. But anyways, that's my own internal crap that we don't need to hear about. Mm-hmm. Name of today's podcast is Little Known $1 Million Strategy Land Trust Fully Explained.
Wait a minute. Land trusts. We've talked about trusts. We've talked about land contracts. Okay, go ahead. Teach me something new.
We haven't talked about trusts. We talked about subject to and using them in subject to, but I've never explained what is a land trust.
No, I don't have it. Even between us behind the scenes, I'm saying that I never heard you talk about it.
You are going to be pleasantly surprised, as well as the listeners. But let me read you the description that you will find everywhere.
Yeah.
Here is what I don't understand. Every time you sign your name to a deed or a note, you're risking everything you own to fulfill that debt.
True.
Which means the creditors have legal rights to chase you into your grave if they choose to. Which is why I'm doing this podcast. There is a very easy solution to this problem that is easy and you are going to love it. Only because it is trouble-free yet extremely unknown by most. And anyone could do it for no extra cost in your deal. This solution is the hidden and protected land trust. And I mean that. It is hidden and protected.
Well, it must be because I haven't even heard it out of your mouth in 5 years.
Yeah, but we use them. You just don't understand them because I just tell you do this, do that, do this.
Yeah, you do the paperwork, I sign my name, and like money happens, it comes and goes, and I'm happy. But teach me more, Dealmaker.
Once you know and understand, it will make you scratch your head and wonder why most don't use it. Savvy investors, including politicians, and I got to tell you that I very conservatively written that word, including politicians, because I had a lot of other expletives to use there, but I didn't. Savvy.
Well, Bill, I'm just confused. You're using the word savvy and politician in the same sentence.
Savvy
now,
investors.
If you said criminal savvy, I'd be like criminal savvy. I'm with you on that.
There's Bill's
just
planet
savvy,
right there.
I don't know.
Now you're in Bill's world right there. But we're not doing that.
Dokie.
Savvy investors, including politicians, use land trust every day only because this powerful document offers personal and legal advantages not associated with any kind of property ownership. Wow. This is strong, Peter. You're going to love this podcast. I'm telling you. I wrote this, and as I was writing it, it's like, Peter's going to love this, right?
Yeah.
So here we go.
Yeah.
All right. But you must first play by the rules to avoid all the problems most legal beagles add to it because they just don't understand it. Then give you bad advice on and make you believe their pompous ideology is correct. Arrogant bastards that they are. Okay?
There it goes. There it is, folks.
Once you finish this podcast, you will soon realize that this is not true. So let's dig in so I can explain it all.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so before I start, I got to do all my housework here. Okay. So first of all, get a cup of tea in my mouth here. In the description of this podcast, wherever you may be listening to us or watching us at this moment, there is a magical link that allows you to get over 25 documents, recordings, scripts, all kinds of goodies for free. So just scroll down to whatever description you're in, whether it be on your phone or whether it's in your computer or your laptop or your iPad or wherever you have me, okay? And if you're listening to me in the shower right now, please cover me because I don't want to get wet. Okay? The other thing is that obviously anybody has any questions for me, you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com and you can get me at support. A lot of people do that. At the top right-hand side, there's a support ticket. All right? Also, when you go to the Flipping Houses for Rookie page, on the front page, if you scroll down, there's two podcasts there. The podcast to the left is the one that we do every week. The podcast to the right is a boot camp podcast, which is, I think it's 30-something videos that are like 20, 30 minutes long that Peter and I did to show you how to build your business. Okay? It's done in checklist format. I will soon, it's actually written, but I have too many things going on and I'm having trouble. I'm overloading my VAs and all my stuff because I have more ideas than I can execute. Imagine that. And I actually will have on the on the podcast page, I have a document that I wrote that helps you watch the 220 or listen to the 223 podcast. It's actually broken up into the 8 categories that we talked about in a few episodes ago. So it breaks up the podcast. So like if you need to just get time blocking, then you could just go listen to the time blocking. If you just need to worry about marketing, you could just go listen to the marketing. So I broke the podcast up in sections. If you want that in the non-pretty format, you can send me a support ticket and I will send you the Google Doc link so you could check that out. Lastly, which it's been quite a while now, it's been since I've been in Florida, and I've been back from Florida, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 weeks now. But for sure, we are broadcasting every Thursday morning, Eastern Standard Time, 9:30 a.m. We broadcast on Facebook, a live stream on Facebook and YouTube, also on Twitter, but we don't get much from Twitter. So if you want to go check us out, or if you want to ask any questions, just go in the chat. Type them. I have a big screen in front of me and I could see your chats, and we actually answer questions these days on the podcast with people that ask questions on the chat or they're checking us out. Okay? Woo! We're done. Let's get down to business, Peter. Actually, that was business. Let's get back on the Bill's plan and get off of Emma's plan and all the geeks. They want me to do all that stuff. Here we go. You ready?
Yeah, I'm learning about land trusts.
I'm going to read to you, Peter. This is a bedtime story, okay? early in the morning.
Once upon a time.
There you go. I'm not sure and think it's irrelevant to us as real estate investors. But land trust, I don't know when land trust came into the world. There's a couple different stories, okay? But I know it's been around, well, some say it was all the way back in Roman times, right? And some say it's been around since King Henry VIII in England, okay?
Yeah.
So I don't know when and where. All that time, people used land trusts to hide their ownership of real estate and or land so they would not have to serve in the military or in modern ages fulfill other obligations of land ownership. Okay? In the late 19th century in Chicago, some people figured out that land trust would be good for buying real estate to build skyscrapers. And city aldermen figured out they would be that it would be good a good way to hide their ownership, since they were forbidden to vote on city building projects when they actually owned the projects. There it is, Peter. There it is.
Think.
The
Right there.
scumbags.
There you go. You would think, right?
No, a politician doing something like that behind our back? No, can't be.
Bill, I just saw something this morning on the news about Clearwater. Some people doing scummy things like that, political, and then properties, and they just got busted. Just this morning.
Yay!
Yeah, really.
All right. And because of a law in England that included the statute of uses, that's how they got away with all this.
The statute?
So it's statute. It's a law.
Yes, statute of
Statute of uses is where this land trust stuff was in England. And of course, we carried over a lot of laws from England and then started, making our own, right?
Yeah.
No, that's back in time, right? Which arose the question, which asked if a land trust would be valid. So in the 19th century, it was asked, would a land trust be valid? I'm going to tell you why. Why? The question went to Illinois Supreme Court. And if you're an old timer, like perhaps some of us, and you've been doing this for quite a while, like perhaps some of us, the real name for a land trust is the Illinois Land Trust.
Is that right?
Because it was written, it was not written, it was prosecuted, not prosecuted, it was jured. There's a word. Jured in Illinois. So its nickname, which is not mainstream anymore, but it's the Illinois Land Trust. Okay. It was ruled that if the land trust was set up with some minor duty, some minor duty on the trustee, then the trust would not be considered passive and would be valid.
Right, meaning he had some actual obligations. He's doing something good. It's useful. It's not just a cover.
There's actual...
It's not just a loophole.
No, it's actual duties.
Yeah, he has to do something.
And responsibilities. And I'm going to explain all this as we unfold. I'm going to explain all this, okay?
Yeah.
That was over 100 years ago, Peter. All that happened over 100 years ago.
So, because when you say the 19th century, then you mean the 18-somethings, right?
1800s, that's right.
Yeah, because the 1800s is the 19th century.
Right.
Sometimes people don't have that right. So the listeners,
like
the first century,
now it's 2020, we're in the 21st century.
Yeah, the first century was from 0 to 99. That's the first one.
Yeah, so let's just get this
straight.
Way
back
okay?
then, huh?
Let's just get this straight, okay? The guy that invented that, he was a cuckoo clock because he couldn't count, okay? So
No,
let's just leave it like that.
No,
all right?
0 to 99 is 1. 100 to it's 2. Come on, I worked it out. I went like, wait a minute. I used to get that mixed up. That's why I'm saying that people might think this is recent. Way back in the 1800s, yeah, people were doing stuff back then. They weren't just sitting home waiting for us to show up. They've been doing stuff.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So that was over 100 years ago. And to this day, deed of trusts are valid and filed as a public document and acts as an asset protection.
So deed of trust, is that the same thing as a land trust?
Yeah. I'm gonna cover all this. I know it's confusing. That's why I'm doing a whole podcast on it, because there's all these little nuances in it. And once we get done, you're gonna so the deed of trusts are valid and filed as public information. I'm sorry, I got distracted. My wife is doing something and she's texting me, and I don't know what she's doing, and it took my attention. So I'll come back here. It was used a lot in the mining and farming industry. Okay?
Mining and farming.
They would use the land, then give it away as a donation once the money was made from the land.
Oh, sure. Once it was like it was worked over and like spent out. Okay.
So think of the mining business, right?
Yeah.
You have this mine that's like digging gold or nickel or plutonium or whatever they were digging for, right? What silver, whatever they were digging for, raw materials, right? They didn't want anybody to know who owned them, right?
Yeah.
Because they were worth a fortune.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody just told me the other day, God, I can't remember who it was. They were talking about the Rockefellers. It must have been somebody at the cigar shop. They were talking about the Rockefellers, and one of the rooms, they were doing something, some tour or something. I don't know where they were. And there was a room, and in this room was a map of around the world, and there were like hundreds of pins on it. And he asked the guy, "What's all the pins for?" He says, "Oh, that's what the family owns for real estate." They had this big map on the wall. So,
And that was still current? It was like that was current.
Yeah, the Rockefeller still owns stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean it's like
I forgot what the conversation was. We were talking about I think it started with somebody talking about how their grandfather owned the property where Stop and Shop is, which is a big grocery store in Southington. And they sold the land to Stop and Shop. This has got to be what, 30 or 40 years ago? For $5.6 million. And that's how the conversation started. So anyways, secrecy is an important aspect of a land trust. Nobody knows who the beneficiary is, except those in or around the trust. Okay, which I'm going to get to this in a minute, but there's a specific way to file the trust so that the beneficiary is confidential. Okay?
Yep.
When someone checks the title, you see the trustee on record, but not the beneficiary.
Right.
Okay? Think of it like this, Peter. The beneficiary is the owner of this entity. It's like a little business, right? So they're like the owner of the entity, right? And the trustee is the manager who runs the entity or runs the trust, right?
Right.
Not much different than if you walked into Home Depot, right? And found a manager.
Sure. They got all the pictures on the wall. Manager, this department, this department, this department. But who owns it?
You might be able to find a district manager or a national manager, but you're not going to really find who the owner is.
Yeah.
Right? You could, if you do some heavy investigation, you got some legal beagles involved or whatever you had to do, you could figure out who the owner is, but they're not obvious.
Yeah.
So unless you get, like I said, really good investigation, you're not going to figure that out, right? So it could be figured out, but it's not like handed to you on a dish,
Right.
right? More to the point, the beneficiary is not the person who signs and controls things in a trust.
He doesn't even put his signature on things after that point.
Because trusts are often used for estate planning, right? And we're going to get to that in a minute. And if the beneficiary is dead or incapacitated, right, he can't sign anything, right?
Yeah.
So the trustee keeps the entity going per the beneficiary's instruction, right? So
Because the trustee is signing things all along, right? Anyways, isn't he?
yeah, so the trustee has the power to do all that, right? So the beneficiary doesn't sign anything. So
Cool.
think about what I'm telling you right now, okay? So I own the property. You're my trustee.
Yep.
Who goes to the closing?
Trustee?
Yeah, you do,
No.
right? So, and how many times have we done that? I control the closings in and out, right? We just talked about this yesterday. I control the closings because that's just one of my hats, right?
Yep.
One of the things I do.
Yep.
But you do all the legwork. You go to
I
the
show up in
closing.
the office, sign
You
papers,
sign the papers, right?
call the banks.
Yeah, you. I mean, I'll get insurance and stuff like that, but you know, it's like no disrespect, but it's like a puppeteer. You know, it's like I pull all the strings and then the puppet does what it's supposed to. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful, but the point is that I don't have the right to sign any of those documents. Matter of fact, I have a deal right now. It's not even a deal. I sold a house that was subject to. Matter of fact, it was the property that I made the How to Buy Real Estate Without a Loan course on.
Yeah.
Okay, I sold that property and we closed in February. Well, I'm getting all kinds of like letters and text messages from the previous owner who I bought it from that the taxes and the water bill isn't paid.
Wow.
So I kind of ignored it at first because I'm thinking, I closed on that thing. You know, taxes are paid. I paid $4,100 and change for taxes in my closing. I know because it pissed me off because I was only planning on spending, I think, $1,800 for taxes. My closing was supposed to be, you know, there was $15,000 in closing costs. I was pissed off about that. I remember that part, right?
Yeah.
And it cut my check down significantly, right? So, I mean, I was thinking I was going to get 55,000, and I think I got 40 something thousand. I was pissed off, right? So,
Yeah.
I know because I combed through that closing trying to trim closing costs, right?
Yep.
And there was a couple other things in there. There was I don't remember what all the closing costs was, but you know, all kinds of stuff. Part of it was this tax bill. And there was a big water bill, too. There was, water bill problems, right? Now, the city I'm in, which is Meriden, is only 2 cities in Connecticut that do this. They bill 9 months behind. Wallingford's the same way.
In which? Taxes, water? Which one?
Both. Well, the water's up to date. No, the taxes. The water's correct. They do that correctly.
Okay.
But they bill, so it's like, in 2000 in December 31st, 2019, they end the tax year.
Right.
So that means in July of 2020, you're actually paying those taxes.
Okay.
So what that means is when you close, you end up in a closing with about 1.5 years worth of taxes to catch it up because you need to pay forward to your seller.
Yipes.
I mean, to your buyer.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, so my point is that it's always 1.5 years worth of taxes. So, you know, I mean, you get a $5,000 a year tax. It's all of a sudden it's $7,500. That's what it was. It was $7,500 in my closing. It was
Okay.
a lot of money.
Rookie question, but don't you benefit from that on the other end when you're buying?
Which is exactly how I get stung, because nowadays what I do is I either tell the lawyer to hold it in escrow, or I take that tax money out and I put it in my escrow account. Mm-hmm. Because it'll sting you. Yes, so you are correct. When you purchased, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You get the money then. So you get a big fat check.
Yeah,
But if
on
you're
the
not-
receiving end at that
If
point.
you're not careful and either put it in your closing when you sell, it'll do exactly what it did. It stings. But
Okay.
I bought that property so long ago that it was like I didn't do that. Back then it was a different story. In any event, one of the things that I'm not good at, and I should be, but one of the things I'm not good at, and I should probably speak about right now, is when you do subject to deals and take over mortgages, you definitely should consider the tax swing. And also title insurance. For a very long time, I did dozens and dozens and dozens of subject to deals with no title insurance. Now I would not dream of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just did a closing 2 days ago for a property that somebody gave me. Not only did they give me the property, I mean, I know this person. Not only did they give me the property, like literally just gave it to me, right? I wrote a note on it. I mean, I have to pay them when I sell it, but they gave me $25,000 to renovate it. They wrote a check for $25,000 and told me to
Yeah,
go renovate
you're
it.
renovating it before you actually did the closing to buy it.
Yeah.
That's how close you are with these people, because
Right.
you know each other. So it's you don't even need to shake hands. You say, "What do you want to do?" and you do it.
We've done millions of dollars with the business together, so I wasn't worried about it. But the point is that even that, where I'm so close to him, I still bought title insurance.
Yeah.
I mean, the closing cost me $2,000 or $2,100 or something like that just for the closing, because of the title insurance, and that wasn't the tax swing. It was a $5,000 tax swing for him. So because I know him, what I did is I let him float the money, because normally he would give me the money and I would put it in escrow, right?
Right.
So what I did is I had the attorney put a note in the file saying that we owe him, I think it was $160,000 or whatever. When we sell in the other end, we're going to deduct it from that money.
Right.
Right. So he didn't need to come up with the $5,000. I didn't need to hold it in my account. It's just that when I pay him the $160,000 when I sell it, which will be in a couple months, then we'll just deduct that from what we owe, and everybody was happy.
Sure.
Right? Which, by the way, what was I bitching about a lot yesterday? That closing. Why was I bitching about that closing? What do I never do, Peter?
You never like to waste time and be stuck
And
in an
I
office
def-
where
I-
you can't smoke a cigar for 4 hours.
Exactly. I was there it was 3.5 hours of closing. I don't go to closings. In fact, the guy that I was with, which is a relative, one of my money guys, and he was saying something, and I'm like, I don't do this. He goes, what do you mean? I don't go to closings. He goes, you don't? I'm like, no, I can't remember the last time. I think the last time I was in a closing was with you when we had Margaret there. You know, because she was 80 years old or whatever, and we went to the closing with her, right?
Yep.
He's like, really? I said, yeah, I don't do this. I'm here because of you, man. I enjoyed the time with you, but this is not productive. And then the attorney walks in, and he hears us talking, and he's got a stack of paperwork, inch stack of paperwork. And he's like, yeah, it's a good thing he's here. Look at all this paperwork and all this bullshit I got to go through. Let him see what I got to do. Let him see what the money is. So every next time when I charge him and he asks me about, I'm like, yeah, okay. I pretty much told him to shut up.
Yeah, that's all he has to do.
Go
if
away.
that's all he has to do to make all the money he
Yeah.
makes, I don't feel sorry for him at all. I've met him there once at the very beginning. Yeah, it's not a rough life.
All right. So the beneficiary is in the background, right? And the beneficiary owns a property, but they don't do any of the paperwork. Okay, so the point in talking about the closings and going off on that little rampage there was that if I go to the closing, I'm not going to be able to do anything except make decisions. Which, by the way, that's the reason why I don't go to closings, because every closing I go to, with the exception of this one, it costs me money.
As things come up,
Yeah. So sellers want last minute things. They'll come to the closing table and pull some shenanigans, And for a very long time, I would not answer my phone on the day of the closings. And the reason why is because they would have to figure things out. Now, things are a little bit different. I remember Ann, the money girl, she was pissed at me one time because I wouldn't do that. Because what I wanted, because it was a mistake that I had nothing to do, and I thought the realtor should pay for it. And she was just beside herself that I would even consider that. In fact, it broke up our relationship. She was lending me money and we were doing stuff, and she just thought I was the cat's meow until that day. And she was directly insulted that I would even think that they would use their commission to fix their problem. That it should be me that paid for it. So when you're in the closing, there's no scapegoat for you. There's no, unless you got a partner or something like that, which I've done that in the past, you're stuck. It rolls all the way up the chain, and you end up paying. I mean, it's cost me thousands of dollars. I mean, there's been closings that cost me $4,000 or $5,000. They want brand new refrigerators. I mean, all kinds of this crap happens. The basement's not finished, and you got to put money in escrow. And when you leave them alone and leave them to their own devices, they figure it out. Or they stall the closing, and he'll call me and say, "Hey," and I'll say, "Do this or do that," and that's it. But that's the biggest reasons I don't go to closings, because it was costing me tens of thousands of dollars a year to be in the closings. Okay. All right. So when it comes to loan liability in a trust, okay, in the absence of a due on sale clause, okay, the trust can be used to eliminate personal liability. Okay? Most FHA loans closed prior to December 15th, 1989, and all VA loans closed prior to March 1st, 1988, do not contain due on sale clauses. I'm going to read that again. Most FHA loans closed prior to December 15, 1989, and all VA loans closed prior to March 1st, 1988, do not contain due on sale clauses. So let's put the brakes on for a second. Let's reach down and pull that emergency brake and come to a screeching halt. So I am so freaking sick and tired of people telling me that they can't do subject to deals because of the due on sale clause. Well, you know what? Screw you. Get away from me. Don't talk to me. Because you're just an immature, uneducated investor that's listening to somebody and not evaluating your information correctly. Because I've done these all the time. First of all, since 1988, it was done all the time for hundreds of years.
Right.
Hundreds of years. And then these sons of bitches come along in 1988 and say, nope, you can't do that anymore. Who do you think passed that law? Who do you think the lobbyists were working for that law?
Yeah. But the weird thing to me is, like, if politicians are so busy with money and finances and properties, why do they let things like that happen? It's not good for them. Why does that even happen?
Why did what happen?
Why do politicians let laws go like that when they're usually involved with real estate or properties, and that's not to their benefit, and they let it happen? I thought.
Why does that happen? Hello, Peter. This is a democracy that people actually have a say. We could go up to the city hall, or we can go to the Congress, and we can actually stand outside and say, "No, politicians, we don't want that." We could do that, We don't have to stay in our caves like we do now and not voice our opinion about what laws we have.
Yeah, I know we can do that, but the last survey I saw said they don't listen to us. So in the end, when they check how they actually voted, they didn't vote what we asked for. Why
do you think Black Lives Matter is so involved with the race riots? Because they're trying to make so much noise and so much pain that the politicians have to change the laws. That's what they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. That's what's behind it. It's all money. That's exactly what they're trying to do. Now, I'm not saying I agree or disagree, and maybe that's a bad example, and I'll probably get support tickets on it. But that's how it works. They have to do that. That's right. Desiree says they're corrupt. That is true.
Yeah.
As soon as I started ranting, she typed, "Here we go."
Buckle up.
Therefore, these loans that I'm talking about, so prior to March 1st, 1988, there was no such thing as a due on sale clause. So think about it. So it's only been the last few years,
Yeah.
right? What, 30 years that we've had this problem?
And those mortgages are probably paid off by now in moot point anyway.
Right.
Most of those. But like any law, like my kid always ran to like helmet laws. Like one kid falls off a bike and everybody's got to wear helmets.
Yeah.
So what one or two things happen wrong, so now everybody has a due on sale clause.
Right.
You know how many things went wrong? 2, 3?
But listen, that stuff doesn't matter. It's like the Dodd-Frank Act. Everybody was worried about the Dodd-Frank Act. But I'm going to tell you right now, guys like me that do a lot of business, and not even me, because I'm not even in that category. Guys way above my head, like the Donald Trumps of the world. You think they're not going to hire, not as a president, but as a real estate investor. You think they're not going to hire some very high-paid legal beagles to get around this shit?
Yeah.
Here's another one, Peter. You ready for this? I'm so sick and tired of hearing this crap. It pisses me off. Texas, you can't do lease options. That's not true. I looked up the law. I have a coaching student that is in Texas, and we spent hours. He spent more most of the time, but we spent hours looking this up. It's just not true. Besides the fact, who gives a flying crap? Don't do a lease option. Do a agreement for deed. It's a better contract anyways. A lease option's where you're only using the property. Agreement for deed, which we did a podcast on that, right? A whole podcast on that, on land contracts and agreement for deeds, right? Mm-hmm. An agreement for deed is actually a mortgage statement. So with agreement for deeds, you could actually go refinance the property because you technically own it. With a lease option, you can't do that. You have to go get a new loan instead of doing a refinance. Right,
because on the lease, you're just leasing. On the agreement for deed, you're
it's a mortgage.
You're paying the mortgage toward getting the deed when it's paid.
It's
you get the deed later, but it's like it's coming.
It's got coming. An amortized document, which means that there is principal and interest being paid, and it's a device just like a mortgage.
So even though you don't have the deed right now, it's like a car. You don't have the title right now, but damn it, it's your car. You're driving it, and you're paying on it. And when you're paid off, they hand you the title. Yay.
Right.
Okay. So I don't remember. I remember land contract, bond for deed, an agreement for deed. That's the Texas way they say.
Yeah, Texas way they say. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
But it's just like that myth. People are so quick to not evaluate data. They just think it's true. They hear somebody say it and they think it's correct.
Bill, I think it's worse than that. I think it's a way to get out of having to do things. It's a damn good excuse that, well, I can't. It's not my fault.
Right.
It can't. It's not my fault. You can't. Instead of like, well, how? I had a friend who was brilliant. When people said I can't do it. I can't buy it. I can't do this. She goes, well, how could you? Well, I don't know. Well, think about it. How could you? She kept asking, how could you? How could you? How could you? Look for a way. That's your point. Find a way to do it. As soon as somebody says no, find the yes. I don't care how many no's there are. How many yeses you need? One.
Did your wife know you had this girlfriend?
Well, she was just a friend that was a girl, Bill. Don't get excited.
All right.
And yes.
So once this 1988 law came in effect, which was the latest one was December 15th, 1989 for FHA mortgages, these loans required, prior to that, these loans required no qualifying to assume them. Right? So trusts were used as legal entities to assume these loans.
Oh, I see.
This means that you forego the need for you to assume a loan personally.
Right.
It kept loans off your credit report and your financial statements.
So the trust took over paying the mortgage. You don't even have to ask the bank to get their permission. You just did it, right?
Prior to 1989, no, you just did it, right?
Yeah.
Which is why you should always use trusts for seller carryback loans. Because it's an entity. Now realize that there's only 4 types of entities that could own real estate. Only 4.
Right.
Right? And they are a personal name, which is an entity, an LLC, S corporation, some sort of structured entity, a partnership, which is an entity, or a trust.
Yep.
Right? So it's a person's name, which we're going to talk about in a minute, a person's name, some sort of an entity, LLC, S corporation, something like that. Number 3 is a partnership. And number 4 is trusts. Those are the only 4. Those are the only 4 entities that can own a property. Right. So the process is really simple. The trust takes the title to the property as an entity, and the trustee signs the note as trustee. Okay.
Right.
Your name appears nowhere on these documents as the beneficiary, as long as the word trustee appears after the trustee's signature name. It can't come back to haunt him.
Yep.
Because he's acting as trustee for the trust. Okay, so he's acting as an employee. It's not a personal, you can't be personally attacked for it.
Yeah.
Okay? Another key reason to use land trust is the lawsuit protection, which is why I started doing it from the beginning. So a key reason is the lawsuit protection. It's a foolproof plan that keeps you from getting sued because your beneficial interest is hidden.
Yeah.
It can be found by a bloodhound attorney or somebody there close to him, however, but it makes him or her work for it. Right? He won't find it on record. That's the point. He won't find it on record.
It's not recorded publicly.
Right.
Yeah, it's not publicly recorded. There's a document, it's in your file, it says who's who, but you hang on to that personally. So the trustee does, somebody has a personally.
I'm going to cover that in a minute, yeah. So
Okay.
it would be hearsay on how he would figure it out or she would figure it out.
Oh.
Or wind up, in other words, this person doing the investigation would get wind that you own these properties. It's the only way anybody would know.
But wind is not admissible evidence, is it?
No, but it would allow that person to go digging.
Got it.
So normally, let's say you were flipping through the pages of a book looking for something and you just looked at the titles. But you didn't read the content.
Yeah.
And you can't find what you're looking for in the book, right? Because the title doesn't say, oh, Bill's in there somewhere. Then somebody comes along and says, oh, no, I read that book. It's actually in chapter 6, paragraph 5. And you go look, and it's like, oh, there it is. Right? It's kind of like that. It's probably a bad analogy, but that's what it's like. So they go into the land records, and they're looking for my name because they're not going to search through all those books. You ever been to the city clerks with all those books? There's hundreds of years worth of deeds in there and 3 to 6 inch books.
Yep.
You're not going to go through all of them. So nowadays they're computerized. So if somebody goes in and puts my name in the computer, it's not going to show up.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
But if he gets wind, oh, Bill, that property's in a trust and Pete's the trustee, he can now go in and type that address into the computer base, go read the deed of trust, and realize that it's the such and such land trust, and can now hunt down the land trust, the owners of the land trust. Minimally by calling you the trustee and saying, I got a court order, I got something that says you have to tell us who the beneficiary is.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Obviously, they can see the trustee, and they can, like with a court order, they make them say.
Or they can scare the trustee, and this trustee will just well, Bill owns that. Don't call me, which would happen, right?
And you said this before. You can't sue a trust, right?
Well,
directly.
No. I've not said
You
that.
can't. No, I thought I've heard you say that in the past.
I've not said
You
that.
can't. No. Oh,
You can't put a lien on a trust.
Oh.
Right.
Oh, okay.
You can't put a lien. It's very difficult to put a lien on a trust.
Okay.
Which is usually a litigation. Now, as far as suing, I mean, it's an entity. Any entity could be sued, as far as I know. But it's very difficult to put a lien. Like a contractor wants to go put a lien on the property because he says you didn't pay you. I mean, I know contractors that just do that as a profit center. They just put liens on properties. You know what I mean? And I don't know them well, believe me. I know of them. So by having things hidden, it stops most lawsuits right in their tracks. Right? Now think of it this way, Peter. You got 5, 10, 20, 100 doors or properties. And your name's not on any of them. Mm-hmm. What happens when Mrs. Jones on the 3rd floor of such and such property trips and falls, and she's okay with it because you take care of her, but her daughter thinks that she has a lawsuit and should go see an attorney, so the daughter goes and hires an attorney, and what do you think what's the first thing the attorney's going to do? How many properties does this guy own? How deep is his pocket?
How much can I get?
Right? And he's going to gauge his lawsuit off of that deepness.
Wow.
Right? I mean, nobody talks about this because lawyers are supposed to be prestige in our society. Yeah.
Well, they're supposed to just concern themselves with what harm the person has and what they need to rectify the situation, not how much they can squeeze out of the other guy.
Right.
Yeah, well, that would be fair.
I had my friend tell me one time, I had a guy, I was out traveling with Management Success at the time, and I probably shouldn't say this, but he said, lawyers and who else? And politicians are so low that when they look up, whale shit are stars for them.
Jesus, that's brutal.
That's pretty cool.
Like,
I didn't say that. I'm just repeating it. So there you go.
Yeah, well, I'm repeating this one. What do you call a lawyer and a politician at the bottom of the ocean?
I don't know.
A good start. A good start.
A good start. But bada bing.
Boom. I didn't make that up.
All right. So, anyways, it's just it's a diversion for a lawsuit. Okay? But they're very difficult to put liens on them. Okay?
So is part of your point that even if they can tell that you own this property, they have a hard time finding what else you own, so they don't see how deep your pockets are?
Yeah.
That's part of that point.
Well, or if they do sue you, it's just going to be for that property. So if you lose anything, it'll be just that one property. It's not going to lose. You're not going to lose 3 more properties, which is my argument about which. By the way, let's just talk about this now. I was going to talk about it later, but let's just talk about this now. So,
yeah.
My argument, I've always been taught that you don't put more than $1 million of retail property cost in an LLC. So here in Connecticut, in my neighborhood, that's about 4 properties, 3 or 4 properties.
I've always heard it as how many properties, but it's really the number of dollars then.
Right. And the reason why is because if you get sued, it's asset protection. If you get sued, okay, then they could take those properties. So you don't want to have all your properties in one entity.
Right, because they can't touch another entity. It's a different entity. It's got
well,
nothing to do with
they
it.
can, but it's a lot more work and it's a lot more expense and it's a lot more fancy work in the court. Okay. Getting a judge to say that the case is worth going to penetrate something out. I mean, it's just harder to do. I mean, anything's possible, but and nothing is foolproof. But that's what these guys get paid for, right? So I could tell you that my first 10 years, I never had an entity. I never had an LLC. I put lease options in my name because there's no risk there. And whenever I took a deed, I put it in a trust, and I had a trustee, and I didn't need to worry about having an entity because it was behind a trust, and I had all this property that, in the beginning, I was the trustee and my partner was the beneficiary. So there's properties, and even to this day, when I go on my credit report and stuff, those properties are still listed that I own them, or I was part of that. Right? But once I broke away from my partner, some 10 years ago or 12 years ago, that's the first thing I did is I stopped putting properties in my name. So anything that goes on public record, I would use a trust, right? Now, to the detriment of me receiving support tickets on this issue, when you take over, and I'm going to cover this in a little while, I think, if I remember right. When you take over a subject to deal, you put it in a trust, right? So what I'm saying is that the trust the beneficiary of the trust could be your entity. So like
the entity.
Right. So it could be that Peter's the trustee, and instead of me being the beneficiary, it could be my business as the beneficiary. Right. And what that does is that puts a double layer of protection, because now they penetrate the trust, find out who the owners are, get all that kind of stuff going, and then once they do that, they find out that the entity is the beneficiary. Now they have to go penetrate the entity.
And then today could be an LLC, S corp, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, to get way more confusing, the smartest thing in the world to do once you start getting a lot of real estate, which is a little bit of expensive, and I'm trying to do it right now, is to have a family trust. A family trust is a trust that's much different than a land trust, and I'm going to go over that in a minute. A family trust is like an entity that runs your business, so when you pass away, the business will continue to run, and everybody will continue to get paid, and everybody will get their dividends checks and all that kind of stuff. It's like a business. But there's specific instructions on who does what. It's almost like doing a power exchange. You're changing power before you die, right?
Right.
So what happens is those family trusts could own the shares in the businesses.
Okay.
So to go up the chain, and I'm being very complex here, I wrote none of this down. So to be very complex here, the property has a land trust with a trustee, and the beneficiary being the LLC. They penetrate that to find out that the LLC stock is owned by a family trust, which is another layer, and they have to go penetrate that. So it's just asset protection to the nth degree. Okay?
Okay.
So just a little side note there. All right? All right.
But that sounds like something that's important when people own property and they're getting older like us, and we have family, and then we see stories of people dying and leaving the property to the kids, and they just sell it all off. They don't know what to do with it, and it just kind of falls apart. Or they take it over and run it like Daddy taught them.
Right.
But otherwise, it just falls apart, and it's a mess.
Right.
It gets sold off and disappears.
So land trust, this is a segue right into that. Land trusts are also good estate planning devices. Right? But they're not the total plan. I want to. So what we're talking about, right? Let me just follow my notes here. It will avoid probate in most cases. But when we take over property subject to, the bank sees us put the house in a trust and will never consider triggering the due on sale clause, which is why I get pissed off when I hear, due on sale clause, you can't do subject to. I mean, I know, I'll name one. I'll name one. Brad, whatever his name is, at Bigger Pockets. He hates subject to. Well, there's a due on sale clause, and he has all these podcasts about how you can't do subject to because of due on sale clause.
Really?
And he's wrong.
He's supposed to know better.
He's wrong.
Well, he's in the.
It's because he doesn't do them. we're with a guy, which I'm not going to name right now, that says the same thing. He doesn't do on sale clause. Joe, what's his name? Joe
Crump?
No.
Oh.
The one that does wholesale leasing.
Out in the Midwest? McCall.
Joe McCall says in his intro that he doesn't do subject twos because he got burned by them. That's because they don't know how to do this.
Wow.
They just don't know how to do it, which nothing wrong with them. I'm not bashing them. I'm not saying, but they just don't understand the intricacies of it.
Right, but when you tell people you can't do something, they believe it, and then they miss opportunities.
Right. So by putting the house in a property trust, in a subject to deal, makes the subject to deal the best deal ever to do. Because not only are you helping the person that owns the property by relieving them of their problems and their debt, usually, taking the house off their hands, managing the property, but when you do what I'm telling you to do, you're also putting it into the safest entity that you can do. You're protecting it, you're protecting you and your family, and you're not assuming any debt, like I said in the beginning of the podcast. You're not putting your name on anything that has recourse. It's the most risk-free way to buy real estate, which is why I say all the time I love subject to, because there are so many benefits with the stroke of a pen on a few documents that it's actually pathetic. It's like it's wonderful, but the reason why is because we used land trusts to devise the deal.
Bill, when you said property trust, is that the same thing?
Land trust and property trust. Yeah, it depends on which part of the state you're in.
Got it.
Imagine this, Peter. You do a closing on a subject to, right?
Yeah.
The seller of the house stays as the beneficiary of the trust. Okay, you with me?
Yeah, he sold it to you, but you leave him as the beneficiary, which seems weird. Like, wait a minute, that's not his house anymore. But all right, that's step one.
So you do a closing. So think of this: what I said before. There's only 4 types of entities that could be owned. Right? There's a person's name. There's an entity like an LLC, S corporation, a partnership, and a trust. Yep. So here's what we're going to do, and this is where the misunderstanding is. Okay. And this is boring. We don't even this is be one of those poor podcasts that won't have, it doesn't have a fancy name and it doesn't have shiny object. But I will send my coaching clients to listen to this, because when you understand this, the world of real estate opens up. You could literally own millions and millions of dollars worth of real estate in the next year or two just with this one strategy. Because I did it. I went 18 months and I had like $3 million worth of real estate. Okay? So here's the point. You're taking the entity from the person's name and putting it into an entity called a trust. So you're going to do a closing with an attorney, with a closing agent, where they're going to take it from and not be suspicious at all of any subject to where you're taking over deeds or anything like that. Because the deed is going from the person's name into the entity. And then you're going to take over the entity. You get the magic of that. Nobody teaches this, Peter. I've spent over $100,000 in education. I've read every subject to book there is. You know that I read a lot. Okay.
Yeah, I remember when you put this together, maybe last year.
Yeah.
You put a bunch of
It's
pieces.
huge. Nobody teaches this because it's
you called me on the phone and bored the shit out of me for half an hour explaining all this to me. But I really appreciated it, because if you listeners, if you get your hands on a subject to deal, pull this up. If you don't think this is exciting today, pull this up when you want to buy that sucker and do this, and then it's really going to be extremely valuable.
So let me put this over here. So Desiree has a good question, right? So let's put it up there. So she says, without a coaching answer, How would you explain that to the seller?
Yeah.
Just that way, Desiree. We're going to put the house in a trust, and we're going to manage the trust. That's it. It's just that simple.
Now, you're saying, though, that you put him as beneficiary at the closing. Then when it's over, you switch that.
I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
So all I want to do is get the, this is, so somebody says this is better than a reverse mortgage for retirees. That's exactly right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
now watch this. Okay, so I want to stick with this concept. I don't want to divert too much because I want to get this. So you take the entity from John Smith's name and you put it in the 123 Main Street Trust.
Mm-hmm.
That's considered estate planning.
Mm-hmm. It's done all the time, right?
Yeah.
You get the letters in the mail. Come to such and such meeting at the restaurant at 6 o'clock. We'll give you a dinner and sell you our trust package.
Well, they call it now end of life planning.
Oh, that's
right?
that's better wording.
Yeah,
end of life.
End of life.
Yeah, that's
planning.
attractive.
I hear a radio,
hey honey, you want to go to the end of life dinner?
Right.
That's not good marketing. I'm sorry.
So now this is, and we talk about this. I think it's episode 166. Is the subject to how to do deal subject to, right? Because we floated into the subject to concept, right? So here's my point. If you were to pull up a HUD-1, which is a settlement statement that the government issues, right? In other words,
you use at the closing with the lawyer. That's the
settlement statement. A settlement statement means it's a document of where all the money came from and where it went. Mm-hmm. It settles, it balances the closing, right? It's like the balance sheet for the closing. It balances who gets what and where, and it shows who brought the money in and who took the money out. Because when you get done, it should be zero. There should be no money left.
Yeah, it'll go somewhere. Taxes, you, me, the
profits, everything.
Water bill, all that stuff.
So online,
Lawyer.
I think was it 202 or 203? I forget the line. I think it's 203. It actually says subject to. It says right on there on the government document the subject to amount, and that's the reason why.
I pulled up one of the settlements I had from one of our closings. I pulled it out of my folder and I looked at the bottom, and it's been there all along.
Yeah. Right. So it's very illegal, right? Yeah. So the reason why is because now you don't have to do like what I did for 15 years, is sneak around and get the seller to sign documents, and then you go file them because a lawyer won't touch it. Or a closing agent won't touch it. No, you close with an attorney, or you close with a closing agent if you're in an escrow company, if you're part of the country that does that, right? And you actually close from the owner's name, John Smith, into the 123 Main Street Trust. You keep the owner as the beneficiary. Mm-hmm. Okay? Once all of that is done, everything is filed. You then get a one-page document that has a couple of paragraphs on it that assigns the beneficial interest to something else, mainly your business. So once the closing is all done, right? Mm-hmm. Or in the closing, I have them do it in the closing. They sign this assignment of beneficial interest to my entity.
The previous owner signs that as well? The beneficiary?
Well, who's the beneficiary?
The previous owner of the property.
Right.
Is he the one that's signing that or not?
Well, who's the beneficial interest?
Well, I guess the reason I'm asking this is I thought you said that the trustee can change the beneficiary anytime he wants. Is that wrong?
Right.
So do you need the man who sold you the property to sign anything after that, or can the trustee just assign a new beneficiary?
Okay, so you misunderstood something I just said. So what is beneficial interest?
That's the person who's going to receive the benefit of the proceeds of a property.
Oh, man. It's the owner of the property.
Yeah, who's going to get,
It's the person that owns the property. The beneficiary is the person that owns it.
Right. Okay.
So he has interest in owning that property, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So when you assign beneficial interest, what are you doing? It's like doing a quitclaim deed.
Right.
You're assigning your interest to somebody else. It's like stocks, right?
Yeah.
It's like in an LLC you have stocks, in an S corporation, C corporation you have stocks. Mm-hmm. And this land trust, the stock or the interest is the property.
Sure.
So once the entity is in a trust and there's a beneficiary, mm-hmm. and there's a trustee set up, mm-hmm. right? The owner can say, I'm selling my stocks. Mm. I'm assigning my stocks to this person.
Got it.
And that's what he does. That's the assignment of beneficial interest. Mm-hmm. Right? Once I have that document signed, I now, because the way my trust is written, I can now, on a piece of paper, I never even have to talk to the trustee. I could fire the trustee on paper and hire a new trustee with 2 documents. And all I got to do is keep those documents in my filing cabinet, so if somebody asks me who it is. So now that person's name is going to be on the trustee, right? As mm-hmm. trustee, which I prefer. Mm-hmm. I prefer to use the same person. So whoever I'm going to use as a trustee in my trust, that's who's going to close with me with my seller. I prefer not to change the trustee, but you could.
Okay.
Okay. Here's the thing. Mm-hmm. When you do that, when you close from a person's name, the entity, Joe Smith, and put it in the 123 Main Street Trust, the bank never suspects anything unusual happened and that the house was sold. You're just doing estate planning, and it never triggers the due on sale clause. Mm-hmm. They're not even thinking that. It's not even close.
No, I've called banks as a trustee saying, hey, I'm the trustee. Can you please send paperwork to such and such address from now on? They go, okay, sure. Send me this document. And they're not like, why are you doing that? Right. This is done all the time. And you're talking to a secretary at a computer pushing buttons. It's not like you're talking to the president and worrying about losing money. It's some girl. And she goes, okay, thanks. Here's the paperwork. And you sign it. It's all over.
Right. So Desiree says, how will they feel comfortable because they remain on it, right? No, we just talked about that, Desiree. So they're going to just do it through the closing until we get all the legal paperwork done. And then we're going to assign their beneficial interest to us. Okay? So if something happens, they're not liable because they have a copy of this piece of paper saying that they assign their beneficial interest to us, much like a quitclaim deed. A quitclaim is Q-U-I-T. They're quitting, they're stopping, they're divorcing themselves from the liability and or the profits or anything to do with this property. So the beneficial of interest signature, right, does all that. So they've divorced themselves from the property. Yeah? Peter. Mm-hmm. I could say this till I'm dead.
You probably will.
This is freaking genius, what I'm teaching right now. This is absolutely, like Desiree say, coaching material. I don't talk about it publicly because it could get confusing. But we're talking about land trust today, so I want to make sure you're very clear that land trust is the device that you need to understand because that's the conduit that's going to get you millions of dollars worth of property without getting a loan. You get the deed in your name so you own them, which, by the way, in the hierarchy of getting acquiring properties, getting the deed is the highest hierarchy you can because it gives you the most choices of what you can do with that property once you have the deed. Mm-hmm. Right? You have the most choices. So the hierarchy is getting the deed. Below that is a land contract or a bond for deed. Below that is a lease option. Below that, so that's how it goes. Right? Yep. And each one of those, you have less and less ownership and you have less and less choices of how you could sell that property or what you can do with that property, right?
Right.
This is completely legal, Peter, because the legal beagles are going to close for you.
So now that you've stated all this, if a person took this information to any lawyer, especially pointing out the HUD statement line, would all lawyers get this, or would they have to have it explained to them? Because I know sometimes
I'm going to
train
cover that.
your lawyers.
Let me wait till I get to that, because I'm going to cover that. Because
Okay.
I'm going to tell you
All right.
why that happens.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to explain why this happens, right? So
Yeah.
now, here's something very important that we got to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
The trustee must be someone you have confidence and faith in. It has to be that way.
Well, he is a trustee.
Right. Okay. Because they're going to need to do what you need them to do. Because you can't bypass them and do it legally.
Right. They have to do the steps.
Like with an employee, if one of my employees does something wrong, I can bypass them and I can fix it. But here you can't bypass them and fix it.
Right.
Of course, a dishonest trustee can illegally sign away a deed to your property, or worse, generate unwanted loans.
Really?
Now, well, they have that right. Remember, the beneficiary has given the trustee all the control in case he passes or she passes. They need to have that control, right?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to do what the beneficiary tells them to do. Now, we're going to go back to many podcasts ago where I talked about, and I know you agree with this because we talk about it all the time, right? If it's not in writing, it's not true.
Oh, hell
So
yeah.
every correspondence you have about this property between you and the trustee, the beneficiary and the trustee, should be documented and in writing and in the folder jacket of the deal,
Yeah.
so that you could do that. Now, you had the best story ever, Peter,
I do.
about that, because you went to litigation with a tenant, and your son
that one.
helped you print the chain of text, which, how many pages was it?
About 70.
70 pages of correspondence with
Yep.
this tenant that won you the case hands down, because the judge read it and realized that this guy he pulled the racist card, he pulled all kinds, discrimination cards, he pulled all kinds of cards, but just reading his language and hearing the way he was talking, the judge figured out that he was full of shit. That he was just playing games.
And, while it was all happening, I'm thinking to myself, where's he going with this? What's up his sleeve? What's he trying to do? So I just use everything that I've ever learned from everybody beneficial and decent in my life to just be the gentleman all the time, to say, I understand, but where's the rent money?
Take the high road.
They always take the high road, because you don't want yourself in the text calling people names and being the asshole. Right. So, yeah, I'll always take the high road, do the right thing, keep things in writing, and the text can be downloaded and presented. It was amazing. And, I never said that. Sorry.
Right.
He said that. No, he didn't. It was perfect. And,
so make sure
I didn't do it on purpose. It's just...
So
seemed the right thing to do.
Make sure the correspondence between you and anyone is in writing, okay?
Yep.
Now, let's go over what you should avoid with these puppies, okay?
Okay.
So number one, never, and in case you didn't hear me, let me repeat it, never, no exceptions, never buy a property without a thorough title search and getting title insurance. I did it for a long time. I never do it anymore.
Well, what I learned from some of our transactions, that the title problem might not be with the last person who closed it, like, your relative. It's not that you don't trust your relative. It could be 2 or 3 sales earlier, right? That something that slipped.
Yeah, so in this particular case, he didn't buy title insurance when he purchased. So I'm protecting him. But more to the point, here's what happens. This is a basic axiom, which is a basic law in my life. Okay? This is very true, and you should listen to me carefully. And I'm not trying to be pedantic here or shoving something down your throat. Just listen to what I'm telling you. Just let it resonate. Money flows to the point of least resistance.
That's a little scary if you think about what that really means.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so if you're in the chain of title and you're the point of least resistance, what are you going to get? Money problems. When I mean money flows, I don't mean just in. I mean out too.
Oh yeah.
Right. So if
No,
you're the weakest link in the title chain, that's where they're going to go.
Yeah.
All litigation is motivated off of that statement that money flows to the least point of resistance. Right? So defense attorneys look for those loopholes. Do you know what makes a good defense attorney?
No.
A private eye.
Sure.
All you got to do is read the book by Michael Connolly, which is it's a
novel,
nonfiction book, right? But it's The Lincoln Lawyer.
It's a fiction book.
Fiction isn't. Yeah, it's fiction. I'm sorry. I said it right. I said it
You
backwards. It's
froze
fiction.
when your blurbs. I wasn't even sure what you said.
Yeah,
but
it's a fiction
yeah.
book.
Fiction.
Okay?
Yeah.
I said nonfiction.
But,
It's a fiction book.
Yeah, but people believe. Well, there's truth in fiction.
But here's the thing. He was in that world before, so he's a very good writer with that.
Oh, really?
And he thanks people in that book for the research he did. Okay, but you'll just in that book you'll soon realize that the most integral part of a defense attorney is the private eye.
Sure.
Going to look for those weak points
Yeah.
that
makes
they could
sense.
attack in court, because there's no defense.
Yeah.
Right? So it's the same way with you think. Now think about it. How many title problems do you think a title insurance company actually pays out on? Not the amount of that they're collecting on, that's for sure.
Nope.
Right? So they got the best lawyers in deep pockets. So they're going to go find the least resistance in the chain of title, and they're going to hang the problem on that person.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. So you need to get title insurance because no title insurance leaves you vulnerable. Plus, closing agents make mistakes. And it makes, because your name's on the title, you pay for it. You can't say, oh, my lawyer made a mistake, and the title and company, oh, well, we'll go after the lawyer. No, your name's on the title. You should have known better. You should have made sure that the lawyer or the closing agent did it, so you're responsible. And that's how it works.
Lovely.
I mean, look at the house we bought in Meriden not too long ago. We used that as a negotiating tactic. He used an attorney, bought it from a bank, an REO, and the bank and the bank's attorneys made mistakes that I found in the title search. I found them, not my attorney.
Yeah.
I found them, right?
Yeah.
And brought up the concerns to the point where they were going to try to do a quiet title action, which is a lawsuit that brings all the things into it, and once it's adjudicated from the judge, all title interests or claims have to go quiet.
So, and any encumbrances, any problems? Sorry, too late. Too much bullshit.
And
Just
my
stop.
lawyer told me it could be up to 15 grand in 4 to 5 years to resolve that problem.
Not on Bill's planet. Not
Bill-
even on mine. Not even on mine.
How long did it take us to fix that? How long did it take me?
Well,
2
it
weeks.
went back. Yeah, it went
2
back and
weeks.
forth. It went back and forth to the finally you got to the point of like, what the hell do we do? And then within 2 weeks, you found something to do. And
I figured it out. Yep. And
Yeah.
I'm not bragging here, but this is what happens with these things, right? And my lawyer's like, how did you think of that? And I'm like, oh, that's what I do.
no, but Bill, there's a really big point here. It's a point of living. When you have a problem, you said something like once, you come up with a solution, that's not so good. You come up with another solution, how about if we do that? That's not so good. Keep looking for solutions. What can I
Yeah.
do about this?
So
Until
the
you
first,
solve it,
the
don't
first
give up.
solution you give yourself for any problem is the worst solution ever. It's when you get into the 8, 10, 12 solutions later is when they start getting good. Right?
Yeah.
And my qualification for a solution is this sentence. I do this in my own head.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen?
Oh.
And when you resolve in your mind that you can accept that, your acceptance level is, well, I could do that. What's the worst that can happen? And you come up with an instant answer, right?
Yep.
You say, well, I'd be willing to do that. It resolves. Definition of solution. Definition of solution is problem goes away.
Yeah.
Right? So that means if you're gonna be a real estate investor and you want to learn how to do a certain thing, like for example, subject to, right? You buy a course or buy an education device, whether it's a book or a video or my materials or somebody else's materials. The problem you have when you bought that course is blah, blah, blah. That course should resolve those problems. They go away. You no longer have those questions. You no longer have that problem.
Yep.
And that's the problem with a lot of courses that get sold and a lot of education is because it doesn't solve the problems. Right?
Opens the door to the next course?
Yeah, opens the door to another problem. Right? which is what I've become known as. My personality is definitely portrayed as antagonistic. I definitely am a New Yorker, and I am not polite, and I'm going to get in your face. In fact, this past couple weeks, the last 10 days, I wrote some emails. I lost 55 people off my email list because I know I was just pushing it. And you know what? Hit the unsubscribe, you mush cookie. See you later. Get out of here. I'm good. Bye. You don't want to listen to me? Just click I'm good. Because I don't need to do this. I do this because I like to. But, and I know that. My wife tells me I'm harsh all the time. I get that. But I make money. I get shit done.
Yeah, but Bill, what people may or may not know, underneath all that whatever scruffiness.
You're telling my
secrets. Yeah, no, underneath it all.
You're revealing the beneficiary.
Yeah, no, you're really the nicest guy around. If somebody needs help, you will help them. You will bend over backwards. You'll get in your car. You'll drive an hour. You'll go to church. You'll go anywhere. You'll come to my house for free to help me on stuff, and vice versa. Yep. That's the person you really are. Yep. And the other stuff is just because it's business and you don't want to be taken advantage of and you want to get things done. You don't want to hear, no, you can't.
It's my
Because problems got to get solved. If somebody can't sell a house, what are you going to do? Just let the guy starve in the corner? Let the house just sit there? One of our friends, Jay, saw a house in Glastonbury that's been there for years. I see one in West Hartford, 2 years. Nobody knows what to do with it. The town doesn't know. And it's just rotting away. Things like this happen, and somebody's got to fix it.
Yep.
You got to be tough sometimes.
Thank you for the kind words. Let's move on because we need to get out of here soon. So we're talking about things you should avoid. So the first one is never buy a house without doing a title search and buying title insurance.
Okay.
Number 2, the way I generate all of my trusts are with a warranty deed of trust. In other words, listen to the words. We're going to go through them. Warranty, it's a warranty deed of trust. Warranty means that you get a clean title with nothing attached to it. That means encumbrances. Encumbrance means something that stops or slows you down a path of progress. So there's no liens, there's no notes, there's no money owed or whatever. Okay? Now when we do subject to, that's what the subject to portion means, is we're buying the property subject to the underlying agreements that the previous owner made. We're going to keep those agreements. Right? So we're assuming those responsibilities and agreements. Right? So warranty deed means warranty, you're assuming that mortgage and know what they are, or in most closings when you pay cash, the warranty portion means that they're passing the deed with everything they know, and a clean deed is passed. Nothing's attached to it.
Right. You're not going to run into problems later. Oh, by the way.
Right.
It's like you're done. Move on.
So warranty deed of trust, warranty we just covered. Number 2, the property is deeded to me. It changes entities. It goes from John Smith to Bill Hawthorne, or whatever, one of the 4 entities that I talk about, right? And number 3, it generates the trust. So warranty deed of trust does those 3 things. It warranties, it transfers ownership, and it creates the trust. Okay?
You would think that you would need 3 documents to do that, but it's
all in one document. It's a page and a half long. It needs to be, in Connecticut, it needs to be notarized and 2 witnesses and filed, and it's done. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. This is all done with, like I said, 1 signature from the seller and then filed. It's not complicated. Now, do not let your attorney talk you into anything different. It's not a living trust. It's not asset protection trust. It's not irrevocable trust. It's not a family trust. It's not any of those, because if he starts doing that type of trust, which he knows, he doesn't know about a property trust because it's not very common. So he's going to ask for things like bank statements, and he's going to ask for social security numbers, and he's going to ask for all these things to devise these living trust or asset protection trust or business trust or irrevocable trust or family trust. He's going to be off doing something he should not be doing. You do not need an attorney. You just need this 1 deed of trust. This warranty deed of trust. This 1 document does it all. You do it yourself. Or when you're using an attorney or a closing agent, like I talked about before, just make sure he uses this device. And if you want that device, you're going to have to, it's not cheap, but you're going to have to go to flippinghouses4rookies.com, go to courses, and there's a package you could buy that has all my documents in there, and this deed of trust is in there. Which, by the way, it's a couple grand to buy all my courses, but I'm telling you, this 1 document is worth the 2 grand that you would pay. It's worth it, okay? Unless, of course, you become a coaching client, then you get it all part of the coaching package, okay? So, this is a very specific trust. It's a land trust. It only does the property named. It doesn't do any other trust work. It's just the property name, which is why we form the trust with a deed. Because it only does the property named, nothing else.
Yep.
Okay? There's no other assets in this trust, just the property. Okay? Now, here's the funny part. The warranty of deed goes on record with the trustee's name on it, like we talked about before. Right? The documents that have all the rules on how the trust is run and the full names of the beneficiaries and all the people involved is in your desk drawer. You don't have to file that portion of it. You file this deed of trust, and when you file it, it warranties the deed, it changes ownership, and it develops the trust all at once you file it.
In a page and a half. That's amazing.
Yep. And only those who you want to see this, you'll show it to. Otherwise, no go, baby. No can do. Last thing I want to say is the IRS sees these as transparent. The money passes through them legally. Any income is treated as income to the beneficiary, so the grantor isn't taxed twice on his return or her return. Okay? So the trustee does nothing at tax time. The trustee does nothing at tax time. He doesn't even need to mention it legally. It's a pass-through. There is no money ramification to him or her at all.
Right.
If the beneficiary makes $10,000 or $10 million in that property, it does not affect the trustee. They do not have to file tax returns. They don't even have to mention it to their attorney because it has nothing to do with them.
Okay.
The beneficiary does on his tax or her tax return. The strength of knowing what I've just told you, Peter, is worth millions and millions and millions of dollars to you if you get out there and you use these devices in all of your real estate transactions. It's huge. What I just gave away for the last hour and a half for free could be in itself, well, Lou Brown teaches it for $3,000. He's an old timer, right? I can remember Ron LeGrand trying to sell me asset protection courses to pretty much teach you what I just taught. And I'm going to tell you right now, as pompous and as arrogant as I could be right this moment, they are not going to teach you the detail that I just taught you, especially about the 4 entities. I've never heard that. I made that up myself. I didn't make it up. I just observed it, actually, right?
Yeah.
The 4 entities and switching it and using closing agents, because I have never heard anybody teach that ever, ever, ever. You close from the person's name into an entity, and then you consume the entity. You know how I figured this out, Peter? I was doing a deal. I mean, I read a book. I read old books. I go on eBay and buy books from the 50s and 60s and the 30s and all that stuff, because the way they did shit back then still works, especially with real estate, right? So I buy this old stuff, right? I mean, I probably shouldn't say this, but I just bought a book. I bought it for $500, but it's sold for $1,000. Okay?
500.
Right? So I shouldn't buy this stuff, because sometimes, I mean, I shouldn't do this, but I get so much stuff out of these books.
Yeah.
Right? So my point is that I was fumbling around with a deal just before I read this book that I bought. It was written, I think, in the 70s or the 80s, right? And I was reading that book, and it's like, he didn't say any of this stuff in there, but what was happening is right before then, I was dealing with a property. I don't remember the property, but we were talking about in negotiation that the property was owned. I think it was an apartment building. And I was talking to a realtor, and the property was owned by an entity, so she suggested that I buy the entity instead of the apartment building. And that triggered in my mind, because 2 weeks later, I'm reading this book, and I'm like, it started to fall together. I'm like, no shit. So what you do is you take the owner's name, and you take it out of the owner's name and put it in an entity, and then buy the entity. And nobody talks about that. That's done in the commercial business daily. That's a huge strategy. I mean, I know several people that do it to date.
Yeah.
They don't buy the real estate. They buy the entity that owns the real estate. They buy the stocks and the shares in the entity for millions of dollars sometimes. And they just take over. They do an entity swap, right? Legally. And they become the new officers of the entity. And record it with the state, and there you go. They own the real estate. And that's what we're doing with a subject to deal. And nobody. In fact, I'll put a challenge up. If somebody can find that this is being taught somewhere else and they can show it to me and it's for real, I don't know. I'll give you my how to buy real estate without a loan course for free. That's $500.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's what I was thinking. Make it worth their while.
Yeah. Okay. So, did I promise what I delivered? I mean, did I deliver what I promised? Do you understand? Do you understand trust
both.
now? I did both.
I well enough. There's a lot of moving parts, and sure would like. I've seen some of the documents myself, but if you haven't, it's good to see it, and then have a little experience with it. But it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get the part about trust and why it's so valuable, right? And nobody talks about it because it's kind of like this gray area, especially for gurus, because what happens is. It's a little. It could be complicated. I mean, I just spent an hour and a half describing it, right? And you need to do that before you can. You need to understand what we just talked about before you can even attempt to use the device. I mean, basically, before I go and buy a pickup truck, I need to know what a pickup truck is and how it works, right? Then I can go buy a pickup truck, because it'll make me want to ask questions like, does it have this and does it have that? Which, by the way, I was in a pickup truck the other day that's a 2019. That son of a bitch had 9 speeds or 10 speeds in the transmission. You imagine that?
What?
It's got 10 gears, 10 speeds in the transmission. Automatic transmission, but it had 10 speeds. It was a Ford. It was a Ford, and it had like a Mustang motor in it, so it was a little hot rod. But 10 speeds. Can you imagine that? That's like crazy. So, anyways, I was.
You're a car guy.
I was floored by that. I can't imagine taking that transmission apart and seeing all that electronic shit in there. Oh my God, I can't even think of that. I used to take transmissions apart when I was younger, but I wouldn't dare do it now.
I hope it doesn't break.
Hell, I don't even change a tire anymore. So, all right, Peter. Just to finish up, remember, scroll down in the description of wherever you're listening to us, and in there, whether it's, I don't care where you are, whether it's on your phone, in a podcast, your podcast platform, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you are, in the description is a link for all my free stuff. There's 25 different things there. There's videos and audio files and scripts and documents and all kinds of stuff in there that you can go grab. So go help yourself to all that stuff. You can also go to Flipping Houses for Rookies, support, top right hand side. You can send me a support ticket. I answer them all myself. And you could go check us out on Facebook, Flipping Houses for Rookies. Go to the video section. All our videos are there. Or you can go to YouTube and just type in Flipping Houses for Rookies, and it's on our channel. YouTube is fairly new. There's only probably about a dozen videos on there. All the podcasts are on there. The audio files for 2 years are on YouTube. So if you don't have a device to listen, like a podcast device, or you're old like you and I are and didn't know what podcasts were until we started this one, you could just go to YouTube and type in Flipping Houses for Rookies, and all these recordings are on there. Okay? So with that said, we are over and out, Peter. We're going to go off and do some deals. Get excited.
Oh, I got to stop right after. I'm going to head right out the door after this.
Yeah, there you go. Me too.
Yep.
So if you have questions, shoot me a support ticket. Otherwise, have a good week. Go do some deal hunting and get her done. Over and out.
So long, folks.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.